The book of Esther or Esther, chapter 6. On that night, the sleep of the sovereign fled, and he commanded to bring the book of the records of the annals, and they were read before the sovereign. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the sovereign's eunuchs, the doorkeepers, who had sought to lay hands on sovereign Ahasuerus. Then the sovereign said, "What has been done in value or in greatness to Mordecai for this?" And the sovereign's servants who attended him said, "Naught has been done for him." And the sovereign said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had come into the outer court of the sovereign's palace to speak to the sovereign, to hang Mordecai on that wooden structure that he had prepared for him. And the sovereign's servants said to him, "Look, Haman is in the court." And the sovereign said, "Let him come in." And when Haman came in, the sovereign asked him, "What is to be done for the man whom the sovereign delights to value?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "Who would the sovereign delight to value more than me?" And Haman answered the sovereign, "For the man whom the sovereign delights to value, let a royal robe be brought, which the sovereign has worn, and a horse on which the sovereign has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head, and let this robe and horse be given into the hand of one of the sovereign's most noble princes. Then let them dress the man whom the sovereign delights to value, and make him ride on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, 'Thus it is done to the man whom the sovereign delights to value.'" And the sovereign said to Haman, "Hurry, take the horse and the robe as you've spoken, and do so. For Mordecai, the Yehudi, who sits in the sovereign's gate, let no word fail of all that you have spoken." And Haman took the robe and the horse and robed Mordecai and led him on horseback through the city square. And it was Haman that proclaimed before him, "Thus it is done to the man the sovereign delights to value." Then Mordecai went back to the sovereign's gate, but Haman hurried to his own house, mourning and with a covered head. And when Haman related to his wife Zeresh and all his loved ones all that had befallen him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is from the seed of the Yehudim, you are not going to prevail against him, but certainly fall before him." And while they were still speaking with him, the sovereign's eunuchs came and hurried to bring Haman to the feast which Esther had prepared. Chapter 7. And the sovereign and Haman came in to drink with sovereigness Esther. And again on the second day at the feast of the wine, the sovereign said to Esther, "What is your petition, sovereigness Esther, and it is given to you? What is your request? Up to half my reign, and it is done." And sovereigness Esther answered and said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O sovereign, and if it pleases the sovereign, let my life be given me at my petition and my people at my request. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be cut off, to be killed, and to be destroyed. And if we had been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept silent, although the adversary could not make up for the sovereign's loss." Then sovereign Ahasuerus asked sovereigness Esther, Who is he and where is he whose heart is set to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this evil Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the sovereign and sovereigness, and the sovereign, arising in his wrath from the feast of wine, went into the palace garden. And Haman remained before sovereigness Esther, pleading for his life, for he saw that evil had been decided against him by the sovereign. And when the sovereign returned from the palace garden to the place of the feast of wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. Then the sovereign said, also to ravish the sovereigness while I am in the house. As the word left the sovereign's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the eunuchs, said to the sovereign, also see the wooden structure, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on behalf of the sovereign, is standing at the house of Haman. And the sovereign said, impale him on it. And they hanged Haman on the wooden structure that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the sovereign's wrath abated. Chapter 8. On that day, sovereign Ahasuerus gave to sovereigness Esther the house of Haman, the adversary of the Yehudim. And Mordecai came before the sovereign, for Esther had explained what he was to her. And the sovereign took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spoke to the sovereign again, and fell down at his feet, and begged him with tears to put an end to the evil of Haman the Agagite, and this plot which he had plotted against the Yehudim. And the sovereign held out the golden scepter toward Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the sovereign, and said, if it pleases the sovereign, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the matter is right before the sovereign, and I'm pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to bring back the letters, the plot by Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Yehudim who are in all the sovereign's provinces. For how could I bear to see the evil coming to my people, or how could I bear to see the destruction of my relatives? And sovereign Ahasuerus said to the sovereigness Esther and Mordecai the Yehudi, look, I've given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the wooden structure because he laid his hand on the Yehudim. Now, you write on behalf of the Yehudim as it pleases you in the sovereign's name, and seal it with the sovereign's signet ring. For a letter which is written in the sovereign's name and sealed with the sovereign's signet ring, no one turns back. So the sovereign's scribes were called at that time, in the third new moon, which is the new moon of Sivan, on the 23rd day. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Yehudim and to the viceroys and to the governors and to the princes of the provinces from India to Cush, 127 provinces, to every province in its own writing, to every people in their own language, and to the Yehudim in their own writing and their own language. And he wrote in the name of sovereign Ahasuerus, and sealed it with a sovereign's signet ring, and sent letters by runners on horseback, riding on royal horses, bred from speedy mares, that the sovereign has granted to the Yehudim who were in every city to be assembled, to stand for their lives, to cut off, to kill, and to destroy all the power of the people or province that would distress them, little children and women, and to plunder their possessions. On one day in all the provinces of sovereign Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th new moon, which is the new moon of Adar. The copy of the writing to be made law in every province was announced to all the peoples, so that the Yehudim would be ready on that day to be avenged of their enemies. The runners riding on royal horses went out, hastened, and pressed on by the sovereign's command, and the decree was given out in the citadel of Shushan. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the sovereign wearing royal garments of blue and white, with a great crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple. The city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad, for the Yehudim there was light and gladness and joy and value. And in every province and in every city where the sovereign's command and decree came, the Yehudim had joy and gladness, a feast, and a good day. And many of the people of the land were becoming Yehudim, for the fear of the Yehudim had fallen upon them. Chapter 9. And in the 12th new moon, that is the new moon of Adar, on the 13th day, when the sovereign's command and his decree came to be done, on the day that the enemies of the Yehudim had waited to overpower them, it turned around, so that the Yehudim overpowered those who hated them. Then the Yehudim assembled in their cities throughout all the provinces of sovereign Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who sought their evil. And no one stood against them, because fear of them fell upon all the people. And all the officials of the provinces, and the viceroys, and the governors, and all those doing the sovereign's work, helped the Yehudim, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the palace of the sovereign, and his report spread into all the provinces. For this man, Mordecai, became greater and greater. And the Yehudim struck all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, with killing and destruction, and did what they pleased to those who hated them. And in the citadel of Shushan, the Yehudim killed and destroyed 500 men. And Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Aradatha, and Parmashta, and Arasai, and Aradai, and Waazatha, the 10 sons of Haman, son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Yehudim, they killed, but they did not lay a hand on the plunder. On that day, the number of those who were killed in the citadel of Shushan came before the sovereign. And the sovereign said to sovereigness Esther, the Yehudim have killed and destroyed 500 men in the citadel of Shushan, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the sovereign's provinces? And what is your petition? And it is given to you. And what is your further request? And it is done. And Esther said, if it pleases the sovereign, let it be given to the Yehudim who are in Shushan to do again tomorrow according to today's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the wooden structure. And the sovereign commanded this to be done. And the decree was given in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. And the Yehudim who were in Shushan also assembled on the 14th day of the new moon of Adar, and they killed 300 men at Shushan, but they did not lay a hand on the plunder. And the rest of the Yehudim in the sovereign's provinces assembled and stood for their lives, and to get rest from their enemies, and to kill 75,000 of their enemies. But they did not lay a hand on the plunder. And that was on the 13th day of the new moon of Adar, and on the 14th they rested in it and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Yehudim who were at Shushan assembled on the 13th day, as well as on the 14th day. And on the 15th they rested in it and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Yehudim of the villages who dwelt in the unwalled towns were making the 14th day of the new moon of Adar a good day of gladness and feasting, and for sending portions to one another. And Mordecai wrote these matters and sent letters to all the Yehudim who were in all the provinces of sovereign Ahasuerus, both near and far, to establish among them to perform the 14th and 15th days of the new moon of Adar yearly, as the days on which the Yehudim had rest from their enemies, as the new moon, which was turned from sorrow to joy for them, and from mourning to a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, of sending portions to one another, and gifts to the poor. And the Yehudim undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written to them, because Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agite, the adversary of all the Yehudim, had plotted against the Yehudim to destroy them, and had cast Por, that is the lot, to crush them and destroy them. But when she came before the sovereign, he commanded by letter that his evil plot which Haman had plotted against the Yehudim should return on its own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the wooden structure that he made for Haman. Therefore, they called these days Purim, after the name Por. Therefore, because of all the words of this letter, what they had seen concerning the matter, and what had come upon them, the Yehudim established and imposed it upon themselves and upon their seed and all who should join them, that without fail they should perform these 2 days every year, according to their writing and at their appointed time, and that these days should be remembered and performed throughout every generation, every clan, every province, every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Yehudim, and that the remembrances of them should not cease from their seed. And Sovereigness Esther, the daughter of Abihail, with Mordecai the Yehudi, wrote with all authority to confirm the second letter about Purim. And Mordecai sent letters to all the Yehudim, to the 127 provinces of the reign of Ahasuerus, words of peace and truth, to establish these days of Purim at their appointed times, as Mordecai the Yehudi and Sovereigness Esther had established for them, and as they had established for themselves and their seed, concerning matters of their fastings and lamentings. And the decree of Esther established these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book, in chapter 10. And sovereign Ahasuerus laid compulsory labor on the land and the islands of the sea, and all the acts of his power and his might, and the exact account of the greatness of Mordecai, with which the sovereign made him great. Are they not written in the book of the annals of the sovereigns of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Yehudi was second to sovereign Ahasuerus, and great among the Yehudim, and pleasing to his many brothers, seeking the good of his people, and speaking peace. Shalom to all the seed.